apply to Western Oregon University? We'll start on the Oregon Goes to College website. From the College Info menu tab, select Apply to College. That takes us to a page that has a lot of really good information about what we can do to prepare to sit down and fill out applications, including a list of the types of documents or materials we may need to have ready to fill out those applications, and some tips for how to be successful in getting through this process. Now, I already know that today I'm planning to apply to Western Oregon University. I've gathered all the materials that I need, and that includes having my It's a Plan College workbook pulled up as a tab. This has some information about myself that I might not have memorized, but I know will be necessary for my application. You may have your own It's a Plan College workbook. You might have downloaded the It's a Plan app for your phone, or you might have this information in a folder or a binder. However you've got it, make sure that you have it sitting with you, and then scroll all the way down to the table that has a list of all of the colleges in Oregon. And you can choose public universities to find Western Oregon. And before we click on that link, I do want to make a note that there is a $60 application fee. And that just means that we're going to need to either be prepared to pay that using a credit card when we are ready to submit our application, or be ready to follow up immediately with the required documents for a fee deferral. So now that we're ready, we'll click on the link, and that will take us to the university's website, where we are directly at the page that we need to apply. And we will be an undergraduate. That's a new freshman. So we'll go ahead and click undergraduate. And it tells us that the first thing that we need to do is create an account. So we'll go ahead and start our new online application. Okay, to create our account, we need to provide a bit of information, and that includes our name. Here they're looking for our legal name, so that's the name that is on official documents like transcripts or driver's license if we have one, birth certificate, that sort of thing. In this case, we do have some required and some optional fields. Required fields are those that have a red asterisk or star, and optional ones are those that don't. In some cases, it's going to make sense to provide that optional information, and in this case, I think my middle name is a good example of that. They also give me the option to provide a preferred name. That's the name that I want people at the college to call me. So for me, I do have one of those, and I'm going to provide it here. Then they're asking about citizenship status. Now, you don't need to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident to attend Western, but they do need to know what your citizenship status is. And if you are to choose U.S. citizen, then they are going to ask for your social security number. And that's going to be especially important for those who are applying for federal student aid. You must provide your social security number if you're applying for financial aid through the federal government. I'm going to go ahead and provide my social security number there and my email address. Now, this is the email address that I am using for all of my college information, and it's the one that I'm checking on a pretty regular basis so that I can stay up to date with the things that the colleges are sending me. Now, these next sets of questions are going to, well, this first one, term applying for, this is when do I plan to start college? And I am expecting to graduate in the spring of 2021 and want to start college the fall immediately following that, so fall 2021. And I need to choose a login name, and it's telling me that both that login name and my password needs to be at least 5 characters long. And so I'm going to choose one, and I'm going to make sure that I write that down in a safe place so that I have so that I know what it is when I need to come back. Same with the password. I want to make sure that I have that in a safe place. And here they're giving me the option to provide a question to answer when I want to retrieve my password. And so I'm going to choose mother's maiden name and fill that in there. You can choose any question that you want that you'll remember the answer to, and then can go ahead and click Create New Account. And tells me, great, I can now log in. And so I remember what my username was and my password. And I'll go ahead and choose login. Now when I come to this section, what I can see is that there's going to be a number of different sections that I need to fill out. And they've already checked one of those off as having completed because I've provided information about my name. And as I go through this process, I'll get more and more checks. And as soon as I have all of them, I will be finished. But the other things that are important to note here is that I do have the option to always come back and finish later, so I can save everything and come back to it. I don't have to sit down and do it all at one time if I don't want to. Just as before, an asterisk means that those sections are required, and so there are several required sections, and then there are some that are not required, and so when we get to those, we'll make a decision about whether or not to complete that. The other important thing to note is that there is a phone number here, so if you have any questions as you're going through your application, you can call Western's admissions office and somebody will absolutely be willing to help if you run into any challenges. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at the name one just to make sure we have everything we want there. And we do, but there is a box here that we weren't asked about before. And so if you have a previous last name, so the most common reason for that might be adoption or marriage, or you've just used a different last name in the past for some other reason, you'll want to make sure that you provide that here. That helps them to connect any documents that are coming in with your application, just in case somebody has used one of your previous names. Okay, then we go ahead and press next. The personal info section also has some elements already filled in based on what we did in the login section, but some things we still need to fill out. So the first one is date of birth, and we will find the year that we were born, and then the month, and the date. So there's quite a bit of clicking in there, but easy enough. And then the place of our birth, and for me that's Oregon. You'll choose the state or country that you were born in. And under citizenship status, so again, this has been filled in from the login information. And I do want to make a note that if you chose non-US citizen, then you'll have the option to check a box if you are asking to be considered for in-state tuition under House Bill 2787. That's the tuition equity. So if that's you, you'll want to make sure and include that there. And let's see what that looks like. You'll have this box here to check yes. But if you are a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, you'll want to make sure that you include that social security number. Our email is already filled in. These next set of questions are all optional to respond to. The university is required to ask them, but we have the choice of whether or not we want to respond to them. And I just want to make a note about a couple of them. Legal sex designation, this is an important one for those applying for federal financial aid. If you are applying for federal aid, then you're required to provide this legal sex designation that matches what's on your birth certificate. So keep that in mind as you're going, and then you can choose your gender identity if you would like. You can also choose not to answer it, or you can choose prefer not to answer. And then you also have options about sexuality, and so again, you can not answer the question, you can answer the question, or answer it with prefer not to answer, your choice. And questions about race and ethnic identity are also optional, and I'm going to make a choice to answer those questions. The first one about being Hispanic or Latino, and the second about race. And you can choose to answer one or both of those questions, or neither of those questions. So most of these next questions are also optional. These ones in particular are especially helpful for the college to be able to connect you to resources once you're on campus. And so it's not a bad idea to answer these questions, particularly if, for example, the answer to whether you've been a foster youth is yes. then they can connect you to some resources on campus if you answer that question. For me, the answer is no, so I'll choose that, but you should choose what is accurate for you. This same one about your parents graduating from college, this is them asking basically if you're a first-generation college student. So again, they may have some resources for students who are first-generation college students. So if neither of your parents graduated from college, you would say no, and that would indicate to them that you are a first-generation college student, or vice versa. English is my first language, but if it's not yours, you can go ahead and click no. And they don't ask what language is your first language, so just go ahead and leave that at yes. And then this question about being a veteran is required, and so it's automatically no. And I scroll back up to be able to click the next button. This next section is asking about our permanent address, and that should suggest to us that there may be another kind of address, and in fact there is. That's the mailing address. So for most people, your permanent address and your mailing address are going to be the same, and if that's true for you, you'll check this box. Permanent address is the address where you live and you plan to be living there for some period of time. That's the space that you live in. Your mailing address is the address that you want your mail to come to, and that may very well be a different place than where you are living, and that's fine. If that's the case for you, that you have two different addresses, one where you are living and one where you want your mail to come, you can leave this unchecked, and then they will ask for your mailing address in the next section. For me, because it's the same, I'm going to check that box, and I'll only have to fill out this section one time. And the first one, my P.O. box or my street address, I'm going to add here. I'll also include my apartment number at this point, and the city, state I live in, and my zip code. And then they're looking for my county, and already says the United States. And then I have 3 different options for phone numbers, and I just have one that I want to provide, and that's my cell phone number, and so I'm going to do that here. If you have multiple phone numbers, you have a home phone, a landline, you can choose that here, or if you have a job where you take phone calls, you could provide your work phone number there. And then I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now this is the mailing address. Now you'll see it's already been filled in for me because I checked that box before that they were the same. If you had not checked that box, you would have blank spaces here and you would fill this in. And go ahead and click next. Okay, so in this section they're looking for information about your contacts, and specifically they're looking for your parents or legal guardians who claim you as a dependent. If you don't have parents or legal guardians who claim you as a dependent, then you can list people who will know how to find you if necessary. In most cases, you'll list your parent or legal guardian. And so I'm going to choose, for me, that's my mother, and I'm going to enter information about her. And her address is the same as mine, so I'm going to include that here. And get those numbers right. And she has one cell phone number that I know as well, and so I'll provide that. Oops. And if I wanted to provide an email address, I could. I also could enter another contact. So for example, if I wanted to enter another parent or another guardian, I could do that here. I don't have another one, so I'm going to come back up and click next. And now they're looking for information about what I'm interested in studying or what I might be interested in doing in the future. And so here they're asking about my major course of study. So this is, what do you want to study when you come to us? And you can choose to not declare a major at this point. You can say, you know, I really want to explore a number of different things. Some folks might call that undecided. Western is calling that exploratory. Either is fine. You're certainly welcome to do that, or to choose any of the options that they exist. For me, I'm going to go ahead and choose that exploratory one. Then they're interested in knowing whether or not I want to participate in a degree partnership program with a community college. For me, the answer is no. However, if you are interested, you'll want to choose which of those community colleges you are interested in doing that with. And I'm going to leave that blank, but you could choose not to, of course. And then go ahead and click Next. And now they're asking information about the high school that I attend. And so I'm going to go ahead and choose or type in the name of my high school and where my high school is, as well as the state and when I'm planning to graduate. So as I mentioned earlier, that's June of 2021, and I can click Next. Now these questions, they're asking what are the classes that I've taken in my senior year, or am I taking during my senior year? And I'm going to be entering some information about those. So it looks like in the first column, I'm going to provide information about my English class, then math, science, and so on. And I am going to provide information about both the fall term and the spring term and the number of units of credit that that is worth at my school. And so let's start with the English one, and the name of my class is Just English 4, and it is worth half a credit in the first semester, and it's worth half a credit in the second semester. And so I'm going to go through and fill in this whole section here. I'm going to do that off screen and come back when I'm done. Okay, so now that I filled it out, I want to point out a couple of things. One, I am not taking any social studies classes this year, and so I've left that blank, and that's fine. Another, I'm taking an AP class and an honors class, and so I've indicated that using the title of the course. And then they do ask me whether or not I've taken any advanced courses, and I have taken AP, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. But if you've taken IB classes, or if you have done any dual enrollment courses, that's this Willamette Promise one, you can go ahead and click one of those. And then Next to move on. This next set of questions is about whether or not you've attended any college classes. And for me, the answer is no, so I'm going to say I have not. But if you've attended classes at a college or university, you'll go ahead and click that you have attended, and then you'll fill in the information just like you did for the high school section, which college you attended, where it was, and how many credits you've earned. But I don't have those, and so I'm going to leave that blank and move on to the next section. This section, examination information, is about your admissions tests. Now, Western Oregon University is test optional, which means that you do not have to take your SAT or ACTs in order to apply to the college. And so I'm going to take them up on that offer, especially in this year of COVID, and not submit my test scores. But if you have test scores that you want to submit, you can do so. You'll need to do that officially by having the testing agency, so either the College Board for the SAT or ACT for the ACT, submit those on your behalf, and to do that officially. In this section, what you'll provide is the date that you took the test that you want to have included. So for example, if you had taken the ACT in January of 2020, you would enter 01/2020 here, and that would let them know to be looking for test scores from ACT from January of 2020. And then you will follow up by having those official scores sent. If you're not providing test scores, you'll leave this blank and go ahead and click Next. This section on residency status is referring to you being a resident of the state of Oregon, and that is so that they can determine whether to charge you in-state or out-of-state tuition. So the first question is whether or not you are asking to be classified as an Oregon resident for that purpose of in-state tuition. And so we're going to go ahead and say yes, and then we're required to answer this information. Students are all required to fill out the student information, and if you are under the age of 24, you'll also be required to fill out the parent information. In this case, you're going to provide as much information as you have available to you. It's possible that some of the questions you won't be able to answer because they aren't pertinent to you. That's fine. Just fill out as much as you can. So for me, the dates of my most recent physical presence in Oregon, basically that means how long have you lived here? And for me, I was born here, and so I've lived here all my life, and so I'm going to enter the month and year that I was born, so January of 2003, and I'm still living here now, so I'm going to provide the current date. I don't have a driver's license, nor am I yet old enough to register to vote, and so I haven't done either of those things, but if you have, you'll provide the month and year that you got your license or you registered to vote. If you have a job, you'll want to provide the name of your employer and how long you've had that job. So when you got the job, month and year to now. And if you have a second job, you'll do the same thing. And if you filed taxes because you've had those jobs, you'll provide the years that you did that. If you have any military service, you'll provide, again, the month and year that you started and then when you completed it. So again, it's okay if a lot of this is not filled in, but you'll go down and do the same for parents. Now, the reason that these aren't filled in here is because I don't actually have that information. It doesn't exist because these things do not apply to me. If these questions do apply to your parents, you'll want to make sure that you complete the information. So for me, my parents, I don't necessarily know all this information off the top of my head, but I do have it in my It's a Plan College workbook, and so I will be using that to fill in these questions. So again, this first question is asking how long have they lived here. So in my workbook, I have some residency information, and for my parent, they have been here since May of 1998, and I can fill that in. And driver's license is not listed here, but I know that my mom got it when she came, and so I'm going to include that here. I don't know when she registered to vote, so I'm going to leave that blank. My mom has a job, and she works for the Corvallis Diner, and I know that she started that in 2015. And she still works there. And so she started that in January of 2015, and she's still there. She doesn't have a second job, and so income taxes, again, I have that information in my workbook because I sat down with my mom before I started my applications and got this information from her, and I know she filed taxes in 2018 and 2019. And she's not in the military, so I'm going to leave that blank. Okay, so again, I filled out as much of the residency information as I can, and I'm going to scroll back up and click Next. And now I have the opportunity to provide any special circumstances, and this is optional. This is the opportunity to say something in my application probably doesn't seem quite right to you, and here's the reason why. Or when you see my transcript, you're going to notice that I had a really rocky year, and here's why. So this is the opportunity for you to give that kind of information, or if something happened and you learned a really good lesson from it, this is a place to write that. If you have special circumstances that you want to provide, it's a really good idea to make sure that you have written that, you've typed it up, and all you need to do is copy and paste that information into this box here. I don't have special circumstances, so I'm not going to do that, but you can copy and paste in here, noticing that it cannot be more than 2,000 characters. Okay, and then when you've done that, or if you choose not to do that, you will click Next. And this is the opportunity to check everything one more time. And that means it's probably a good idea to go back and look at each of those, make sure that you've entered everything correctly, accurately, honestly. And then you can choose to authorize the admission office to release information about your application or not. So you can make that choice here. And then it's time to submit. And you have 4 choices. If you need to go back and make changes, you can click on this button and that will save things and allow you to go back and change whatever you need to change. Or you can pay your application fee. So remember that's $60. So you either need a credit card or information about a savings or checking account. Or if you qualify for a fee deferral, you can choose that option as well. So a fee deferral means that you are not paying that fee until you enroll at the college. So you'll want to make sure that you click the right button. It'll take you to the correct page to pay and submit your application at the same time. So let's go ahead and click. And once we've applied, congratulations.